Good evening. Thank you all for sharing in this evening's memorial tribute to Syma Goldenberg. Before we begin, we want to wish all those who are ill in our community and in the greater community a refuah shlema and express our condolences to those who have lost loved ones during this difficult period. We continue to stand together. To our frontline health professionals who perform God's work each and every day, thank you. Tonight, we have the privilege of honoring the memory of someone who was part of the Ramaz family for over 40 years, Morah Syma Goldenberg. I was fortunate to have been the recipient of so much love and care from Morah Syma as her student, then the recipient of many cards and candies, and finally, as her colleague and friend. No personal occasion passed without a card and some recognition of a life event. Nothing went by and passed Morah Syma. She was a one-of-a-kind woman, teacher, director, colleague, and friend. Tonight, we will hear from those who knew Syma best and give tribute to the amazing life she led and the impact that she had on so many. We begin with the words from Rabbi Haskell Lookstein, which will be followed with a tribute from Syma's brother, Irving Goldenberg.
And among your many beautiful attributes and qualities, you were a supreme letter writer who wrote to students, to parents, to colleagues, to everyone, to congratulate, to compliment, to reassure, and to uplift. Now it is our turn to write a virtual letter of eulogy and thank you to you. Dearest Syma, you came to Ramaz in 1965 to teach kindergarten. You were found by Hannah Harris, the immortal and celebrated head of early childhood education at Ramaz. She made many wonderful contributions to our school, but the best, by far, was her choosing you to be her eventual successor. And succeed her, you surely did. In trying to understand the many blessings that you brought to Ramaz, I think of the strange complaint brought to Moshe Rabbeinu by a group of men who were disqualified through no fault of their own as Tmeim Lameit from bringing the Pesach sacrifice on the first Pesach celebrated by Bnei Israel in the Midbar. Their complaint is in this week's Parsha, Mahaloscha, as follows. Lama nigara levilti hakriv es korban Hashem b'moado. Why should we be deprived of the bringing of the Pesach sacrifice on the holiday? Deprived? What a strange complaint. What they were saying essentially is, why just because we are Tameim should we be disqualified from schlepping a heavy lamb, an expensive animal, and bringing it to Jerusalem, offering it as a korban, and then schlepping most of it back home, roasting it, and eating it quickly, b'chipazon, at the Pesach Seder. They were excused from a mammoth effort. Why did they feel deprived? Obviously, these members of Bnei Israel did not consider the Pesach sacrifice to be a chore or a burden, but rather a privilege and a blessing. Syma, you were a Lama Nigara person. You lived your entire professional life not as a burden placed upon you, but as a privilege given to you. Not as a difficult responsibility, but as a blessed opportunity. Not as a chovah, but as a bracha. You were not blessed with the opportunity to have your own children. And so you lived your life as a mother to 2 generations of preschool children. As a mother, you taught the whole child. You didn't just teach Torah and mitzvos and the 3 R's. You taught children, the whole child, the way a mother looks after her child. In the classroom and outside of it, in supporting parents, in hugging kids during an age when you were allowed to hug kids, in treating every single one of them as your own child, making every one of them feel special, because in your eyes, they were special. Here is a note that a parent shared with me. Dear parents, I wish I could be with you to see your faces as your child goes through his ACT book. I don't even know what an ACT book is. He is so proud of himself, and the feeling of accomplishment is written all over his face. I got the feeling that he was going to explode with joy. The children in general communicate such a love for discovery, learning, etc. They're Kanainahara, beautiful, just beautiful. Shabbat Shalom, Syma. You were a Lama Nigara, Syma, in giving your heart and soul to the cause of Jewish education. My father used to say to the rabbis in his practical rabbinics and homiletic seminars at yeshiva, a Rav is not a master, but a servant. An Eved la'avdei Hashem, a servant to the servants of the Lord. You, Syma, were a servant in that kind of way. In your own way, you were like a Rav, a servant to the Lord. You were a servant to the children and to the parents. You were available to them day and night, and a servant to the Torah that you taught with such brilliance and creativity. Your Parsha lessons were legendary. You filled the children's minds and hearts with love of Torah and mitzvos and ideas and ideals, which inspired them to live Jewish lives. Just read the messages on the virtual memorial journal, one after another, saying, she started me on a life of living the Torah and a life of mitzvos. Who is it who said, all I ever learned, I learned in kindergarten? That judgment could have been made about your classroom, Syma. As your colleague Carol Oakes Wurzberger wrote in that virtual memorial journal, early childhood education was never a job for you, but a calling. Lama Nigara, why should I be deprived? Finally, Syma, you were a Lama Nigara person in giving love to everybody. Everyone felt your love. You exuded it You showered it upon children and adults. You never forgot a birthday. Here, Kenny just said it before me. Or an anniversary. Your handwritten notes in your own beautiful, clear handwriting were unforgettable and so touching. Everyone remembers your warm and loving heart. Truly a heart of gold, reflecting your Goldenberg personality. I remember your mother and father, Sarah and Rabbi Herman Goldenberg. Amazingly, and not by coincidence, these two blessed personalities were in the catering business, and they dispensed food with love, and their illustrious daughter carried on that tradition, catering to each and every individual, young and old, with love. Rabbi Meir Bruckheimer, in a beautiful tribute to you that's in the virtual memorial journal, wrote as follows: Syma was Ramaz, and Ramaz was a part of Syma her whole life. She breathed and lived Ramaz throughout her career in our school. I want to demonstrate the truth of Rabbi Bruckheimer's comment by reading to you from a letter which Syma wrote to me before a Ramaz dinner. Dear Rabbi, each year for the dinner and during the year for various occasions, I make small donations to the scholarship fund. Noam Shadovsky once told me every nickel counts. This year, I would like to increase my dinner contribution and give it as a thank you for the joy of teaching children. Although I cannot make a huge contribution, I want you to know that I'd like to give the most I possibly can. And you should know that I do properly evaluate the privilege of having these extraordinary children in my class. Rabbi, even if I could contribute my entire salary or more, can a monetary value be placed on the love, the sunshine one brings to another's life? In the children's zechus, may my small contribution help in its own way another youngster begin a Torah education. Sincerest good wishes for a most successful dinner in all ways, Syma. And then a P.S. Rabbi, no thank you, please. I am thanking you. Dear, dear Syma, by now your precious soul has been received in Gan Eden in love and gratitude by the universal head of all early childhood education on high. I want you to know that all of us down here, in the school to which you gave your entire professional life, know full well on whose shoulders we all stand today, and whose warm and loving heart must always continue to beat within Ramaz, with love, with respect, and with gratitude. Haskell Lookstein.
We'll now hear from Irving Goldenberg.
Good evening. My dear Sister Syma, passed away some 4 months ago, and throughout her lifetime truly lived her life for the sake of others. From her youth through her later years, Syma always put other people's needs before her own. This was true for family, as she lovingly took care of her elderly parents in their senior years, to her being the great aunt she was to her nephews and nieces, as well as to the thousands of Ramaz students who through some 4 decades she related to as her own. Syma's professional life meant many things to many people. To Morah Syma, every child was a life in itself, and she had a most unusual gift for working with children. Syma's patience, insight, and above all, her unconditional acceptance set the tone for her entire Ramaz experience. Syma was the initiator of a family's connection to Ramaz, which for her was the beginning of a lifelong connection between herself and the family, which remained strong quite after the family's child left the school. Many parents have told me how Morah Syma gave them the running start that she so lovingly provided to all, which made their ensuing years so much easier. They ended by proclaiming, "Syma was and remains an inspirational reminder of why they chose a Jewish education for their children." Rabbi Lookstein wrote me on Syma's passing. Morah Syma started more than a generation of Ramaz students on their way to a full Jewish life. What a legacy indeed. I have been further told by many that Morah Syma was the watchful protector of their young children, how she created an environment of love, serenity, and exhilaration in the classroom, and how Morah Syma influenced generations and will be forever lovingly remembered. Morah Syma's death is a loss to thousands who came into contact with her, and this evening's tribute to Syma is a well-deserved one and is a real comfort to our family. Thank you all for making this evening so very special and meaningful. May Syma's memory be a blessing, and may her neshama have an aliyah.
We'll now hear some words from our head of school, Jonathan Cannon.
My name is Jonathan Cannon, and I am the current head of school at Ramaz, and it is my honour to say a few words about Morah Syma Goldenberg, Zichrona Livracha. I didn't know Morah Syma, but I understand that she came to be known as Morah Syma to everybody who did know her. And I've had the opportunity to read what a tremendous educator she was, and what a thoughtful person she was, and that she was a Balat Chesed. And as I looked through the mission of the school, and as I read what I read about Morah Syma, she clearly was a living embodiment of everything that we stand for and everything that we believe in. And so it's an honor to be head of a school that had Morah Syma as one of its leaders. And it's a challenge for us to emulate the work that she did and the example that she set. But I believe that it is going to be something that will drive us even harder. To Morah Syma, we have a responsibility to keep your memory alive by living our life at Ramaz the way that you did when you were here. And I want to make a commitment, not just to you, but to your family, that we accept that responsibility. We are proud that you were part of our school and look forward to carrying on the work that you did with all of our leadership and all of our educators in the present day. Thank you.
We are now proud to ask two former students of Morah Syma to offer words of tribute. We begin with Noah Pismoni Levi Dresner, class of 96, who will be followed by David Asher, class of 85. David also cared for Syma during her later years, together with his family.
Good evening. My name is Noah Pismoni Levi Dresner from the class of 1996. Morah Syma, Zichrona Levracha, was much more than a teacher and an administrator to me. She was one of, if not the most, meaningful people in my 13 years at Ramaz. Along with Morah Devora, Zichrona Levracha, she helped me both understand and process my mother's cancer that first began when I was in kindergarten. She was the one that pulled me out of my 5th grade class on a Friday afternoon to tell me that the doctors did not think that my mother would make it past that coming Shabbat. Syma was literally the lap in which I placed my crying head as we drove from my mother's funeral to her burial in upstate New York. She helped my father and I write thank you notes after my mother's Shiva to all those who visited us. She was there for the loss of my grandfather and then again, my grandmother. She even used to take me out, along with Morah Devora, for the occasional dinner throughout my time in the lower and upper schools, to allow me just to talk, for us to keep in touch, and to process the difficulties I was experiencing in my childhood. Only years later did I realize that this was also in part to give my father a night off from single parenting. Although he never asked, she was amazing and thoughtful. Through those countless conversations and check-ins, I remained whole. I have no words to describe how she helped me develop as a young boy and remain connected to Hashem. There are absolutely no words to fully describe Morah Syma. I am not only today partially who I am because of her. I'm here today because of her. Morah Syma, I miss you deeply. May your memory continue to always be a blessing.
My name is David Asher, and I was a student of Morah Syma in 1970. I became reacquainted with her in 1999 and was lucky enough to spend some nice times with her since then until she passed away. First and foremost, she was always a teacher in that she cared for her students. Whenever we spoke, the first thing she'd ask is, "How's Ramaz doing? What do you hear from KJ?" The second thing that I like to remember her as is that she was always thinking of other people. She was always sharing, always sending cards and candy and chocolate. She was always giving to others, whether it be her family, her friends. Whenever she came over, she always brought gifts for the kids and even for me. The third thing I'd like to remember her as is she was an intensely religious, spiritual person. Whenever she came for dinner, nothing went into her mouth without a very sincere bracha and a very intense birkat hamazon after meals. When she came for seders, she was always intense, but kind, interesting. Lastly, just as a fond memory, in many ways, she was still a kid. She used to love candy, chocolate. I would always bring her candy bars and ice cream, and I would say, "Morah Syma, you eat like a 10-year-old," and she'd laugh, and we'd share a candy bar. I'm gonna miss Morah Syma.
We are now pleased to share words from her former colleagues, Carol Wurzberger, followed by Rabbi Meir Bruckheimer.
Hi, thank you, Kenny, for this opportunity to speak. I first met Syma in 1990 when I came for an interview for a kindergarten teacher position. And our second encounter was in my home turf at Congregation AABJ&D in West Orange, New Jersey, when Syma came with Susan Mukasey to see my classroom. And after that, there were many conversations and many questions, but there is one question that always stayed with me. I had been head of the program at the shul, and Syma said to me, "Do you think you can work under a boss?" And of course I said yes, and I got the job. But the truth of the matter is that I could not have asked for a better boss and a better mentor. Educating young children was Syma's passion, and it wasn't just a job. Her paradigm for true education went way beyond the academic. She was interested in the whole child, and she wanted children to feel good about themselves and to feel confident. She thought it was her job to instill in children a love of Torah, mitzvot, and Medinat Yisrael. Syma wanted every Shabbat party, every Parsha story to be magical. She loved every child, every parent, every teacher who came through her door, and the door was always open. With her soft-spoken voice and her serene manner, children felt safe with her and loved. And her door was always open to parents. There were parents who would come in long after their children left the ECC just to speak to her, to ask for her advice, or just to catch up. And teachers were always running in to grab something, to borrow something, to ask a question, to let Syma know what was going on in the classroom, in and out all day long. Syma's staff loved her. We knew that she always had our back, and we knew we could come to her with any question. Syma taught me many things. First of all, she taught me to patiently listen, and I mean really listen when people were talking. She also taught me to plan out my day to match my goals. And third, she taught me that forget the planning, be prepared to drop everything and turn in a different direction immediately if that's where the kids were going. She also taught me to fully immerse myself in my classroom and look at the children and see what they were doing. Syma would write beautiful handwritten notes for special occasions or for no occasion at all. And she modeled for me how reaching out to someone in a personal way can be so powerful. I feel fortunate that I was able to teach at Ramaz, but I feel even more fortunate that Syma was my boss. She made me a better teacher and a better person. Tehei Zichronah Baruch.
Good evening. I'd like to share some thoughts about our dearly departed Morah Syma Aleha Shalom. I knew Syma for 40 years. It all started at my first year at the Ramaz Primary School, arriving as a new hire to be the administrator and head of Judaic Studies. Morah Syma always made me feel welcome in this new environment and introduced me to the staff. I soon learned that her friendliness and care was not just to me. Syma was the same to everyone, both the young and the not so young. She was the face and soul of Ramaz. She was the official welcoming committee for all prospective students and their parents to the Ramaz Early Childhood Department. She was the initiator of a family's lifelong connection to Ramaz. She painstakingly had a well-oiled interview process and introduction to the early childhood and Ramaz school. But to Syma, this was not a mere process. It was for her the beginning of a lifelong connection between her and the family. She kept up to date about each child in the early childhood grades and long afterwards as the child advanced to primary, middle, high school, and long after that. Who could forget a Syma note sent to a student or former student on a special occasion? Part of the special occasion was the receipt of this note from Syma. The children always looked forward to Syma's visit to the class. Her stories and lessons were always well received by the eager children. Syma was not just a master teacher. Above all, she was a master mensch. Her traits of Bein Adam L'Chaveiro were legendary to all who knew her. She was respectful and warm to everyone at Ramaz, whether a colleague, a parent, a student, a kitchen staff, or a janitor. To most, she was known and addressed as Morah Syma, and to some of the non-Jewish staff, she was Teacher Syma, but everyone knew her as a master mensch. During my first 2 years with Ramaz, we were in the primary school building located on 82nd Street. Syma and I shared offices. It was quite apparent to me the love and respect people had for Syma. Both parents and students, current and former, felt free to come unannounced to visit and share thoughts. I must emphasize that as much as Syma was part of Ramaz, Ramaz was part of Syma. She breathed and lived Ramaz every moment of the day. A short story will indicate Syma's collaboration and sense of humor. As one of my first projects, I wanted the children with their teachers to experience Tashlich at the Central Park Lake. I did not know the location of the lake in relation to the primary school building, so I requested Syma to show me the best way for the classes to walk from the school to the lake. So right before Rosh Hashanah, we went to the park at 10 a.m. in the morning. The walkway into the park paralleled the driveway into the museum's garage. As we were making our way down the walk, suddenly a car came to a quick stop on the adjoining driveway. The driver's window opened, accompanied by a long stare of the driver, which clearly was a neighbor of mine from Englewood, New Jersey. The potential of Lashon Hara was there, and when I explained to Syma that it was a neighbor of mine, she laughed it off. With Syma's help, the project was very successful. Syma was sincere, caring, warm, and she was a colleague and friend to hundreds. My friendship with her extended well past our years on the job at Ramaz, and for that I feel fortunate. May her memory be a blessing.
Tonight we have so many friends, colleagues, students, alumni, parents. I see so many people on, and thank you all for being here with us. I see Rabbi Meir Moskowitz here. Anyone that would like to share words, we ask that you place your name into the chat, which is at the bottom, and we will just call upon you and unmute you. But before we do that, we have one last speaker with whom we will conclude. And what we wanted to make sure that you knew is this is someone who was a friend, a confidant. She cared greatly for Morah Syma throughout her life. And Gail Kramer will now share a few words with us.
Syma was every new parent's dream. She loved every child as if it were hers. She understood every child like it was hers, and she treated every child like it was hers. She was kind, intelligent, gentle, knowledgeable, and knew just how far she needed to go to get what she needed. I had heard about this teacher, but being a teacher myself, I was open and not yet judgmental. She greeted me as any new parent, but yet I could tell she did her homework even before we met. After my third child passed through kindergarten, we knew each other quite well, and as everyone who knew Syma, she managed to send cards and make calls appropriately throughout the years, never failing to keep up with family simchas and every imaginable reason to keep in touch. A more giving person I have never met in my life cycle. She gave beyond what any human being could give. She never stopped giving even when there was nothing left to give. She wanted nothing and just wanted to be part of every child's life and their families. The hours she gave to each person she touched will never be able to be tallied up. The emotional giving that Syma gave will never be able to be understood or calculated, because every waking hour was concentrated on giving to her students and their families. How she kept track of everyone and everything will never be understood. The hours she spent preparing lessons, cutting, pasting, writing, arranging, creating, painting, immeasurable, cannot be told. I once asked her, "Isn't she tired?" because she rarely went to sleep before 1 a.m., and she simply replied, "I love it and them." This was her family, the children, their families, and her fellow teachers. She rarely spent on herself and was always looking to give to her nieces, nephews, and students. I loved her for who she was and how she always had just the right answer for the questions being asked. She spoke softly and with forethought, and rarely did I ever see her with anger and complaints. She loved her work and the people she worked with. As the years progressed and ill health began to invade, she still wanted to continue on. Even in the last weeks before her passing, Syma would hold coloring classes with the dear friend's grandchildren in her nursing home room. They laughed and sang songs, and she was still doing her thing when spending time with these children. She was grateful for everything. She davened every day and always reminded me that Hashem was in charge. Thanks to some wonderful friends, Syma tried her best and tried to make the most of the difficult situation. She treasured those that became visitors in her nursing room home and tried to lift her spirits. Sometimes she often did for everyone else more than she did for herself. She taught those around her what it meant to be Jewish and practice our religion, and to give to others even when it was difficult for her. Those who came in touch with Syma throughout their lives know how special and lucky we were to have her. She gave so much, and we were luckier because of it. She taught us that being loved unconditionally is so important, and giving back is equally as important. It is imperative to understand how important it is to visit the sick, care for the less fortunate, and be there when we can to help the alone not to be alone as we age. Syma, thank you for being my friend, and we will always remember how special you were to everyone you came in contact with. Thanks everyone for listening.
Eva Bannon, a former colleague, would like to say some words.
So the thing I remember, the first thing I thought of when everybody got together here was the phone number 362-0765. I don't think that for the rest of my life I will ever forget that phone number, and I haven't called it in a long time. I just want to say that my interview Ramaz with Morah Syma kind of went like this. After subbing in the nursery class with the elite Ruthie Colton on the 8th floor, Morah Syma just approached me and said, "Would you like to work here next year?" Having met her a few times with my big sister, Mira, teaching in the school, I felt perfectly comfortable, and Morah Syma has led me on the road to education, and I'll always, because of her, I decided to get my master's degree and move on in the field of education when initially I thought, maybe I'll do something else. But Morah Syma encouraged me and told me that I should continue in the path of education, and I'm glad I took her advice, and I will always be thankful to her for that.
Beautiful. If anyone else would like to say a few words. Meanwhile, I will just remind everyone that we actually have established a special library in memory of Syma. Many of you have already contributed to that library. That fund will be used to continue to build an early childhood library, please God, when we are back from Zoom school and back in the building, and we will have a special opportunity at that point to put something up in the building in Sima's memory. There also is the tribute book and the opportunity to contribute pictures. Some people put on the chat that they still have cards from Morah Syma, copies of them, anything you'd like. We're going to keep those things as part of the archive of the school and really to have that properly memorializing Syma as we should here at Ramaz. Leah?
Yes. Hi, Kenny.
Hi, Leah.
So I had two older sisters already at Ramaz when I started in nursery, and when they started, actually, nursery didn't exist. And it was called Nursery 3 and Nursery 4, and we had kindergarten as part of the ECC. And I remember my mom was on the Parents Council president, and so she was always at school. But we would go to Morah Syma's office a lot, and I remember feeling so much love and just a feeling of comfort that when I was ready to have children and to start thinking about children, that I wanted to continue the tradition that, you know, to honor my grandfather who was friends with the Luxembourg, etc. To get that love, to receive that love that Ramaz really stands for, both secular and Judaic. And my daughter is now finishing second grade, and my son will start nursery in the fall. And Morah Syma was such a role model. And I've talked to friends of mine at who are Ramaz parents, not necessarily graduating the same year. And we all remember her with such kind memories and such fondness. And we were so lucky to have her as a role model and to have her as an inspiration. And I think that Ramaz does such a beautiful job of finding those special people that can inspire our children and teach them, because that's really where, yes, they get Judaism from home, of course, but to also inspire them and inspire them to talk with them, with their parents about the Judaics, and for the support they gave me and my family when I was growing up, and to me and my family now. And I'm sure Morah Syma is looking down on us, and I just pray to Hashem that she's pleased with all that we have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask, before we conclude, for Rabbi Luxstein to recite the Kel Malei Rachamim. Rabbi Luxstein.
El Molei Rachamim, Shochein Bamaromim, Hamsei Menuchon Nechono Al Kanfei HaShechino, B'malos Kedoshim Utorim Kezohar Ha'orakia Mazhirim, L'nishmas Ha'isha Sima Daba Bas Harab Chaim Aryeh, V'sora Zisol, Sheholachah Le'olamo, Babu Shanachnu Mispalalim Biad Nishmasa, Began Eden Tehemenuchasa, Lochein Baal Rachamim Yashtirah B'Seser Kanavav Leolamim, V'yitzrar Hachayim Es Nishmasa, Adonai Hu Nachalasa, V'yanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkavah, V'nomar Amen.
Amen. Thank you, everyone, for sharing in this beautiful tribute. And please, once again, do send us stories, thoughts. It will be very meaningful for all of us to be able to continue to read. I wish you all a good night, and we should celebrate many, many happy times ahead together. And again, thank you for being on with us tonight.